The ultimate goal of Advaita Vedanta, liberation through self-knowledge. Advaita Vedanta teaches that you are, in essence, the Supreme Self. However, due to ignorance, you mistakenly identify with the not self, your body, mind, and senses. This false identification is the root cause of your bondage in the cycle of birth and death, that is, samsara. It is only through the fire of knowledge arising from the discrimination between the self, pure consciousness, and the not self, all that is unreal, that all ignorance is destroyed, freeing you from this bondage. As Vivek Chudamani, verse 47 states, all the effects of ignorance, root and branch, are burnt down by the fire of knowledge. Merely possessing book knowledge or being well versed in Vedanta philosophy is not sufficient for liberation. As emphasized in Vivek Chudamani, verse 162, true freedom comes only when you give up the all false identification with the body and other transient aspects. The ultimate aim of Advaita is to realize one's true nature as pure, limitless consciousness. Advaita possessed that the self is the fundamental truth, existing beyond all doubts and denials. To deny the self is paradoxically to affirm it, as the act of denial itself requires consciousness. Therefore, the realization of one's true nature is both self-evident and the final goal. In the framework of Advaita Vedanta, self-knowledge and self-realization are identical. Knowing oneself is equivalent to experiencing one's essential nature. The path of Advaita unfolds as a series of steps that guide the seeker toward the transformative knowledge of their true self. Through self-inquiry and discrimination, the seeker gradually dissolves the mistaken identification with the non-self, leading to liberation and freedom from the cycle of samsara. This journey is not just an intellectual pursuit, but an experiential awakening to one's own eternal and unchanging nature. Why to seek self-knowledge? The quest for self-knowledge isn't just a passing curiosity. It's a timeless pursuit with deep universal significance. Long before the famous Greek philosopher Socrates declared knowing thyself, ancient Indian sages were already delving into the profound questions of who we truly are and the nature of the universe. This inquiry has captured human interest for millennia, and for good reason. Self-knowledge is not just another piece of information, it is the very foundation upon which all other knowledge rests. Think about it. Before we can make sense of anything else, our relationship, our goals, or even the universe itself, we first need to understand who we are. Without a clear understanding of our true nature, we can't accurately place ourselves within the grand scheme of existence. In Indian philosophy, the lack of self-knowledge is seen as the root cause of life's challenges. When we remain ignorant of our true identity, we end up misjudging the value of things around us. We develop unhealthy attachments to the objects of our desires, which inevitably leads to anxiety, stress, and discontent. In essence, if we don't know the truth of our own existence, we can't hope to overcome grief or experience genuine peace. So the search for self-knowledge isn't just a philosophical exercise, it's a transformative journey aimed at discovering our real essence and attaining lasting freedom from suffering. As we dive into the journey of self-knowledge, we will explore 3 fundamental questions. Who am I? Or what is self-knowledge? How can one attain self-knowledge? And thirdly, how does a person who has realized the self actually live and act? Interestingly, we'll start with the second question, how to attain self-knowledge. In the process, we'll naturally touch upon what self-knowledge or realization actually means. In the philosophy of Advaita Vedanta, there is no distinction between the two. Knowing oneself is the same, equal as realizing oneself. Our journey will conclude with insights into how a person who is rooted in self-knowledge behaves in the world. Advaita Vedanta outlines 4 essential qualities for a seeker of truth. These are not just spiritual checkboxes, but are profound qualities that shape the very approach to life. These are discrimination, which is also known as Vivek, renunciation, that is Vairagya, 6 virtues, or which is also known as Satsampatti, longing for liberation, that is also known as Mumukshvata. Let's get to know all these 4 qualities in detail. The first quality, Vivek or discrimination, is about seeing through the temporary nature of the world. All that is subject to change cannot be the ultimate reality because it fails to bring enduring happiness. The objects of our desires, whether they be fame, wealth, or success, are inherently unstable. Our experiences show us that clinging to these fleeting things only leads to suffering. The more we discriminate between the real and the unreal, the more we realize that truth, lasting joy, doesn't come from the chasing after temporary pleasures. In fact, even when we fulfill our desires, the happiness we feel doesn't truly come from the object themselves. As Sri Atmananda once said, the urge for happiness arises from our deepest nature. We mistakenly seek it outside ourselves because our senses are constantly turned outward. When we get what we want, it simply brings the restless mind to rest for a moment, allowing the happiness that is already within us to shine through. If happiness were truly found in external things, then those things would bring us joy consistently throughout our lives. But we all know this isn't the case. What brought us happiness in childhood may not hold the same charm in old age. Our own experiences support this idea. In deep sleep, when we are free from awareness of the body, mind, and senses, we feel peaceful and content. This proves that happiness doesn't reside in the objects themselves or even in the mind, but in our true nature, which is peace and contentment. Second quality, renunciation, which means letting go of the unreal. Once we have a clear understanding of what is real and what isn't, through discrimination, it naturally leads to dispassion, vairagya, toward the unreal. Discrimination paves the way for renunciation, which involves giving up attachments to the transient in favor of what is eternal. Sri Ramakrishna emphasized that the essence of the Bhagavad Gita's teaching on the art of action in inaction and inaction in action, where the wise operate from a state of detachment, the Brahma Gyanis. He would say, if the word Gita is repeated quickly, it sounds like Gita Gita Gi, which resembles Tyagi, a person of renunciation. Renunciation of the phenomenal existence is the gist of the Gita. According to Advaita, only Brahma or Atma or the Self is truly real, while everything else is impermanent. As Tattvabodha declares, the eternal is only one, which is Brahma. Everything else is impermanent. As Sri Ramana Maharishi said, only one who has realized the Self can be a true karma yogi. But let's be clear with the meaning of renunciation. So, renunciation doesn't mean abandoning our responsibilities. It is internal shift and attitude of letting go, rather than merely outward acts of giving up. As noted by Iyer, neglect of one's duties under the pretext of detachment means nothing but selfishness and love for inactivity. True renunciation is a mental act, and inner letting go of the deep-seated sense of doership or kartapan. It's about freeing oneself from the notion of being the doer of actions. When we achieve this, actions no longer bind us. As stated in the Isha Upanishad, actions do not stain a person who has renounced the sense of doership. In essence, these steps are not just abstract principles, but a practical approach to living with greater peace, clarity, and freedom. They guide us toward the discovery that the happiness we seek is not in the world, but within us, in our own unchanging nature. As we continue this journey, we'll delve deeper into how these qualities lead us to self-realization and what it means to live as someone who has awakened to their true self. For the seeker, they must cultivate certain foundational qualities that prepare the mind and heart for higher understanding. Among these essential qualities, 6 virtues or treasures known as Shat Sampat, which provide the ethical and mental framework for spiritual growth. These virtues, when practiced sincerely, refine the inner faculties and lay the groundwork for realizing the deeper truths of existence. Let's explore the 6 virtues. First, Shama, that is control of the mind, or it is the ability to steady the mind, directing it away from the distraction and keeping it focused on higher spiritual pursuits. Secondly, Dhamma, control of the senses, or it is the discipline to regulate the senses, not be dominated by desires for sensory pleasures. Thirdly, Uparati, that is equanimity of mind. It is a state of mental calmness and non-reaction regardless of external circumstances. Fourth is Titiksha, or forbearance. It is the strength to endure life's hardships with patience without letting them disturb your inner peace. Fifth, Samadhana, means concentration on truth. It is the capacity to focus unwaveringly on the ultimate reality, leading the mind towards self-knowledge. And the last, 6th, is Shraddha, means active faith. It is a dynamic faith in the spiritual teacher or the teachings and the sacred scriptures, providing the seeker with the confidence needed to pursue the path. As Swami Nikhilanand notes, these virtues form the ethical foundation of spiritual life, preparing the seeker for deeper knowledge and insight. Beyond these 6 virtues, the final and perhaps most crucial quality for a spiritual seeker is the intense longing for liberation. that is mumukshutva, the burning desire to be free from the cycle of ignorance and delusion. Without this inner yearning, no amount of ethical practice or virtue cultivation will lead to true spiritual realization. This longing for freedom is what gives life to all other virtues and brings them to fruition. As Nikhilanand insightfully remarks, renunciation and the longing for freedom are the cardinal virtues through which the others bear their fruit. A powerful story beautifully illustrates the intensity required for the longing for liberation. A young student approached a spiritual teacher and said, "I want to learn from you." The teacher agreed and led the student to the ocean. As they waded into chest-deep water, the teacher suddenly forced the student's head underwater. At first, the student remained calm and thinking this was just a test. But as time passed, the student began to struggle, desperately needing air, just as he was about to lose consciousness. The teacher released him. Gasping for breath, the furious student shouted, "Are you trying to kill me?" The teacher replied calmly, "When your desire for self-knowledge is as intense as your desire for air was just now, then you are ready to learn." This story vividly shows that the longing for liberation must be as urgent and compelling as the need for air when drowning. When the seeker reaches this level of yearning, they are ready to receive the wisdom of a qualified teacher. These spiritual qualities are interconnected, each one naturally leading to the next. Proper discrimination between the real and the unreal generates dispassion for the impermanent, transient aspects of life. This dispassion in turn helps cultivate the 6 virtues, which then pave the way for the intense longing for liberation. When the seeker has developed these 4-fold prerequisites, discrimination, dispassion, the 6 virtues, and longing for liberation, they become fit to learn under the guidance of a true spiritual teacher. A qualified guru is not only well versed in the sacred text but also deeply rooted in self-knowledge. Under their guidance, the student follows a disciplined approach. First, by listening or sravana to the teachings, and then by reflecting manana on their meaning, and finally by deeply contemplating or nididhyasana upon them. This disciplined practice ultimately leads to the direct experience or anubhuti of self-knowledge. The revered saint and philosopher Sri Shankaracharya captures the transformative journey of Vedanta beautifully in his hymn from Bhaja Govinda Strota. Through the company of the good, there arises non-attachment. Through non-attachment, there arises freedom from delusion. Through freedom from delusion, one realizes the immutable reality. Experiencing the immutable reality, one attains liberation in life. The process of spiritual growth is a gradual unfolding that begins with the company of the wise and culminates in the direct realization of the unchanging self, leading to liberation while still in the body. In a nutshell, the journey to self-knowledge is not just about intellectual understanding, but a deep experiential transformation driven by a sincere longing for the truth and guided by the discipline of the virtues. When the seeker is ready, the path unfolds naturally, leading to the ultimate liberation of the soul.